Hello. Um, been debating whether or not to record this one or wait a little bit. I think it's probably one of the more important ones um, that I want to talk about. Uh, because it's something really everyone or most people can relate to. Um, and it follows an important moment in my life. Um, and I think it's a good time to not just talk about what happened back then, but how the process played out over, the next um, 2 decades. So I was trying to work out in my head, how do you talk about that? Um, in sort of the timeline fashion I was trying to do. Uh, so apologies if it's not sorted right. When I had tried to figure out how I was going to do this, I knew mm, I would have issues remembering timelines and everything and putting things in what I think is the right order. Um, um, I think my brain works best by association. Um, so, um, I guess we'll start um, where we left off. So I think I mentioned the Navy had sent some people to transfer me to a Navy hospital. Um, and the most remarkable thing to me was that the next day I noticed um, there was no pain in my chest, no pain in my heart. And this has been something that had been happening for a very long time every day, with the exception, as I mentioned before, when they had given me um, medication. Now, I should have tried to remember which medication I was. It was a very common one, and they took it away. Um, so I knew that there was medication out there that worked. I didn't know anything else at the time. And then suddenly, when I'm in the hospital and, um, I'm not taking any of the pain medication that they offer for the gunshot wound in my leg, um, I noticed that my chest pain is gone. So this was something that I thought was very curious, and I wanted to understand it a lot better. Of course, um, I also considered that, there's some old folklore where something hurts or something, and they offered a hammer, a thumb, or a finger or something, and then the other thing doesn't hurt anymore. So, I considered that it just could be something like that. But turns out it was not. Um, really did shock my system, sort of reset everything, and a deep catharsis set in. Um, but it reinvigorated um, my past goals of bettering myself, figuring out why, remember in the past when I was young with my father and his father and their their anger that just appeared to get passed on. And so dealing with that growing up and making a conscious effort, um, this sort of blended together, and I started to um, renew that search. Now it wasn't just about anger; it was about why um, why was this pain manifesting in my body, How is this happening? Why? What can I do about it? Because now I've seen there's both a medical solution and then there's other solutions out there. Obviously, shooting yourself in the leg, not a great solution for anxiety, but it did work. But more importantly, it led to me wanting to understand more about what was happening. There's also um, love, which became, and to some extent still is to this day, much more difficult to work on. Um, Mostly because if you're by yourself, how do you how do you work on feelings of love? Um, this is an interesting problem. Um, and then specifically with the issue of loving people that do not love you back, whether they break up or never loved you in the first place. Um, so that's obviously that would be quite challenging uh, to figure out when you're alone. So, but anxiety, now it had a name. Now I can associate it with the feeling. So, um, we'll definitely be talking about that. Um, Before we skip right ahead to that and what's on the screen here, um, I want to talk about my experience in the Navy hospital. Um, I can't tell you with any sincerity if this was done on purpose, if this was negligence, if this was an accident. I have no idea. Um, I could not walk. Um, Fortunately, there was no real damage to the bone, but still had to learn to walk again. Um, for my recovery, this is not a joke. I'm not making this up. For my recovery, they put me in their AA program, Alcoholics Anonymous. The next day, or relatively close from what I remember, I they had given me some. You get a schedule even when you're in the hospital. Um, and I noticed I had to go to this class. I wish I had a recording of my face, and it was just surreal. But at this point, the Navy was almost. It was something in the background I had to deal with every day, but their influence became comical. Um, I had more important things to focus on. Yeah. So I had to attend A meetings every day or twice a day or something. And the first one, I just couldn't believe it. Um, because they have you go around the room, and it's one of those surreal things. Like these people, some of them have legitimate problems. They're sharing, and then they get to me, and they're like, "Okay, why are you here?" I mean, I dead looked at him. Yeah, my name is, and I shot myself in the leg. I mean, what? It it was frustrating because I had a lot of questions. Um, I had a new area to work on. Um, Obviously, a lot of things to work on. Um, and Um, I asked to be, maybe moved to different type of therapy or something, remotely relevant or useful. They did not. Um, and it was even like sometimes when you watch those movies and someone gets put in an asylum or something, that's kind of what it felt like when you're sane and you're in a crazy house and they're like, okay, well, what did you do? Why did they put you in here? Yeah, man. So that doesn't encapsulate the institution's view on mental health. I'm not sure what else makes a clear example, but a little bit more success when I got out of the hospital. So, learning to walk again was, I made that my primary mission. I refused all pain medicine, um, and I practiced far more than my physical therapy. It was my number one goal there. And of course, I'm near my peak, young adult. I wasn't like working out all the time. Um, I'm not that type of prisoner. Um, but still, when you're young, your body recovers. So, um, the other sort of thing is, remember when I got released from the hospital, someone from my old division, from one of the nukes, he came to get me. He was real pissy. He's like, "You're still our problem," or something. And I hadn't seen or talked to any of them in a long time. Like, maybe technically I was their problem, but um, the Navy, again, in error, and even against me telling them, said that my attempt was just a way for me to try to get out of the Navy, and that it wouldn't work. I can assure you, um, my that was not really the case. Um, so comically, we're back in the loophole again, where I'm imprisoned on the barge. Uh, they want me to work. I'm not getting paid to work, so I'm refusing to work. So they're not paying me, and we're in this cycle. The only bright light right now is that I have been approved to speak with one of the counselors or therapists. I don't know what they call them. I don't remember. So this is great news for me. I'm very excited. Would you like to hear the Navy's support structure that they offered? I got to have a either half hour or 1 hour meeting with one guy once a week. That was it. How many? I mean, look at what we're talking about now, and I'm fast forwarding through a lot of life. Like, um, that was not enough. My request for more time denied. So, I believe the guy I was talking with had some empathy for my situation. Um, so he basically gave me homework. And what he gave me is what you're seeing here on this screen. This is one of the only book titles and author names that I can remember, um, despite having read so much. Uh, it's usually difficult for me to remember names. Feeling Good by Dr. David Burns. Um, I was handed this. This was essentially my homework. The guy told me to study it. And what I remember for the book is It has a lot of examples. It's been a long time since I've read it, but I credit it with um, having enough in there and being clear enough to understand that I could learn from it, um, and put it into practice with great success in my life. And I hate, this is not, um, I listen to the speaker and they changed my life and I meditate this way. And no, this really does um, have effective real world techniques. And from my layman's understanding and what I was able to practice and teach myself, is that it was the basis of what's known as cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, and there were, I think nowadays it is widely regarded as you want to have the cognitive behavioral therapy plus medication to treat someone. Um, and that gives the best success rate. And there's a lot of technical stuff in the book, at least the version that I read, with different medications and scenarios. Um, but the basic idea of it is simple enough. Um, you identify the thought you're having, and typically we're going to focus on those negative thoughts. Um, and it could be an example, like for me, um, this pain that manifests in my heart, it gets worse every day. Um, that means it's going to be worse tomorrow. Um, so you have that thought. Um, this affects you. I'm feeling the pain, it's reinforcing it. But that thought, that's not necessarily true, right? Maybe this pain isn't as much as it or greater than yesterday, and maybe it won't be there tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow will be better. So it's taking that negative thought, identifying it. Um, if you can find the fallacy or the error, or why it's making you feel that way, and then replace it or acknowledge what's wrong with it, with something positive. So for me in that example was, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow could be a very good day. Um, and so there's always hope. So with practice, it becomes much easier. So it's very slow to start. I had a lot of negative thoughts. Um, and then you um, try to catch them as they're coming in, try to, and eventually you learn to avoid them, or not have them, or send them off from whence they came right away, or not, they don't happen at all anymore. So practice does help a lot, and there's a lot of real world examples um, about cases um, with actual people and their problems. So that helps a lot, to be able, especially for me, because I very much enjoy um, hearing other people's stories and sort of integrating, their experiences and their philosophies into my life, for looking for this better way forward. So I cannot overstate how helpful this book was for me. And really, so I give credit to the guy I could see once a week, for giving me to um, uh, this um, sort of manual with the instructions laid out about how I can improve myself. And it was very, very helpful. There are exercises in there. Some of them didn't work well for me. I tried them. Um, but it was the blueprint itself, the underlying um, philosophy of it that um, made it so successful in my life. Um, Now, this for me is not a recipe for bliss. So I don't want people to be confused about this. This is just simply, for me at least, um, taking me to a place of neutrality, not negativity. Um, the people that can sort of exist in a happy state are almost alien to me. But I am very content to not be in the negative state. To be neutral is just fine for me. And this book was able to take me from the negative to neutral. Um, Being happy is a weird goal. Like I said, I'm superstitious about it. Um, but it's not something I actively try to avoid anymore. It's just a recognition. Oh man, I'm happy right now. So, okay, universe, send what you got my way. Um, but this, while not that I remember, I don't remember it was talked about in the book, but this also laid the basis for what I would form my Stoic philosophy and goal, about who I wanted to be, um, the picture of myself that I wanted to be, and working towards that. It's not formed yet. The Stoicism um, comes, you could more accurately say, in my 30s, than my 20s, but this certainly starts to form the base of it, um, and becomes the progression, um, that one can see and describe my 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 outlook, my personality in life. Um, so I think this is really important, um, and I think the number of people it can help is pretty vast. Um, Fast forwarding much later with Brandy, I remember there was one time I was trying to sort of describe this to her. I'm probably not the best suited for this, but we were talking about things, and she was talking about feelings and thinking. And I had mentioned, I was like, well, you think and then you feel. And she was very much against this. And she was like, no, 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 no. You have feelings and you think about them. And I know this not to be true, because of um, my mind. Because um, I could think and then generate this pain, this feeling. Um, so I knew from my own experiences what to be true. Um, and so just having the knowledge of what is possible and to being able to identify things like anxiety, or depression, or the specific thoughts goes a very long way into managing those things. And it's uh, it's sort of upsetting looking back at all that time, all those years, and remembering when that heart doctor sat down, gave me a pill, gave me the prescription, said, "Hey, you have anxiety," and it's like, why? How did I go 20 something years in life without knowing that? Was I dumb? Was it just not known? I, Part of it is nobody wanted to talk about these things. Um, they're all very taboo, which is very strange for me. Um, I know a lot of our society here is very Puritan, and then before you have a lot of masculinity. Um, it's not manly to cry. These sort of things were very popular from generations before me. Um, so um, it's difficult to look back And I always want to know, like with my father, did he know? Or my mom, did they know that this was a problem? Did they was I don't have any idea. Um, because it was such a shock to me. And it's such a simple thing. But I am very happy about um, having the experience and being able to learn and grow. And I hope that other people don't have to go through the painful parts to get to the parts that help them. Um, and at this time, like having a kid is still not something I wanted. Um, so all this was still a personal goal, because I still, at the time, was not sure, how much of me was inherited genetically from my father, how much was taught, because from my perspective, it was generation after generation was afflicted by this. Um, but I began to see a road forward, and that was inspiring to me. Now, this doesn't mean that after this I never became depressed or never had anxiety. Um, what it means is that I had the tools, one, that they would never get so out of hand to be able um, to end my life or to disrupt my life so negatively anymore. Um, there are lots of days still, even decades later, where start to feel in my heart. Um, I have a couple techniques that work very well for me. One of them I talk about a lot is sitting under the shower with the hot water hitting the back of my head. I can meditate, um, and it does a good job. Um, Later on, much later, um, late in my 30s, I do try another medication. Xanax was the original one, I think. Um, I don't know the name of the medicine I got a few years ago. I'll try to get it for next time. I keep a prescription bottle just in case. But again, we live in a country that doesn't have universal health care. Um, so it's a luxury, I guess you could say, um, that is just not affordable. Um, so medications still work, very viable for me, and different medications appear to work. Um, but if that's not an option, I think, and if you're someone who can be disciplined, who can read, you might find this helpful, um, because I did. And occasionally through life, someone will talk about something, and I'll be like a pyramid scheme salesman. Oh, try this book, and then have two of your friends try it. Um, I don't know how well it stands up um, in time, or what other modern techniques exist, or modern books. And it's weird to think that that was 20 years ago. Um, so I hope this was helpful. If there are other things I remember, I'll try to put them in next time. Um, Things are changing up a little bit, and I will probably not have steady internet access for a little bit. So while I may be able to record something, I won't be able to upload it. But this may lower my motivation for recording things. Um, but there's a lot of interesting things to talk about in my 20s, which I sometimes, the dark times or dark ages. Um, they're It's sort of a saga of independence, in an ultimate sort of way. You don't have mommy and daddy, you don't have the Navy. It's truly a point of being let loose, um, and struggling to figure things out along the way. And, I may make it seem a little easy here, getting from there to here, but it wasn't. There's still a lot of trial and error. Um, but in the 20s, there's a lot of fun things to talk about. I don't remember them all. Um, like there was one time where I had 7 jobs at once. And so I remember that number, but me actually trying to figure out what all 7 of them, I'll go through it with you when that comes up. I just remember there were 7 of them. Um, a lot of cool things to talk about with some of those jobs. And really, my resume looks just like a patchwork of stuff. Um, but I have a lot of stories, and I've enjoyed working a lot of different experiences. Um, there's going to be a pattern that comes out, mostly working at night, a lot of security um, from this point on, up to the pandemic. Um, Oops, spoilers. I shouldn't talk about that, should I? Um, so we start to form um, much more of the personality that I'm like now. And of course, it's not perfect. I still have ways to improve. I still make mistakes. I think the biggest lesson, and I don't truly, well, I know about it in my 30s, um, and still fail. Um, it began to form in the 20s, and that is it is not enough to know something. It is not enough to study something. You have to be tested. Um, so I could study this book for years, but without testing it, without putting everything into practice, it doesn't um, take its full effect. Um, and that's something really that my 30s could be described as, and part of this decade. Um, I have an idea formed of who I want to be. I practice. I study. But do I pass the test when I'm tested? Then it's, back again, study more. What could I do differently? Um, and this really becomes the key to who I am. Um, what did I do wrong? What could I do better next time? And um, it plays out to where I am today. Now, not everybody is like this. That's hard to come to terms with. Not everybody cares. Um, One of my favorite things to do is to read, like on Reddit. people's relationship advice, stuff like that, or advice in general. Because, like I said, learning other people's experiences helps me, and I enjoy it. And one of the things I consistently see um, is somebody makes a mistake, and they treat someone wrong or do something wrong. And then, you have hundreds of comments, dump them, move on, red flag. And so I always wonder, um, what it's like if people are red flagged. Like, what if we knew everything and be a lonely life for everybody, right? Uh, because no one lives through life perfect. We make these mistakes. Most people deserve second chances or more chances. There are psychopaths. There are people who don't change. There are people who will take advantage of you. Learning to identify those people is super difficult. Um, and that's definitely going to happen in life. Um, but it is worrisome how common that response is. Um, even when you really understand where someone came from, um, and why they did something, um, it's it's strange and can be very difficult when you start to look at humanity as a whole. Um, uh, a lot of divisiveness, not much unity. Um, I know we're drifting here. I should probably end it, but one of the things that I had a lot of trouble with um, past this point, and we'll talk about in my 20s, some of the negative thoughts of coming back here, not having universal healthcare education, the way we treat our poor or our homeless, um, um, the wealth disparity. Um, uh, and of course, nowadays, um, the political divisiveness um, and the dangers of fascism um, that appear all around us. Uh, these things can be very depressing, and, and negative thoughts that come with that. And what helps me is to try to get perspective. We live our lives and we're the center of our lives, but life existed before us. And in many ways, things were worse. We don't have to go very far back um, for civil rights. Um, we don't have to go very far back for women voting, women's suffrage. We don't have to go very far back for civil war. These are all within lifetimes or several lifetimes um, of us. And that helps a little bit. That slowly, even when we don't think it should be difficult, um, there's progress. And that is what I use to combat those negative thoughts that happen even now. Um, so we'll be referencing this a lot when I talk about things, but I hope it gives a pretty good background on where this came from and how I integrate it into my life. So if I don't post anything for a while, uh, hopefully everything is still well. I will just be waiting to get steady internet access again. So be well, and I will talk to y'all later.